Hi friends, I'm Olga Koelsch and welcome to my studio. Today I suggest to paint something very simple, very relaxing, don't bother about colors and more about textures. So let's start. I found this plate which I use for palette for some different project, and I saw a nice flower bud right here on the plate. I like so much these colors, how they working together. I will try to paint something simple but nice using right this palette, right those colors. You can try to use one of your old palettes or just use your favorite colors. First of all, I need to sprinkle some water on the plate. When you paint multicolored flowers, always start with a lighter color. So on my, so to say, flower, this orange is the lightest one, so I carefully dilute it. I wouldn't use anything else, only leftovers from this plate. And I will set up one of the first petals. One thing I need to prepare is the flower center. So from this point we will grow all the petals. I even can follow a little bit the shape of the petal which I see on my plate. I try to dilute it because we are painting in layered transparent technique, which is pretty light, delicate. I distribute a little bit the water. I try to reduce amount of water, and if you have puddles, tap your brush onto paper towel and use your brush as a sponge and remove the unnecessary puddles if you have. I would like to add a little bit more of bold orange in the middle. So I grab, this is a little bit bolder mix here already, so I just add it right here. What I also see, some blue shades are coming, and I just add a few drops on one of the edges. Now, before I paint the next petal, I need to try this next step. What's the next lightest petal, next lightest color on my palette? I think this is grayish blue. I'm pretty sure it was made with cerulean and some of greens. So I'm pretty sure that's this one. And let's create very nice petal. Unfortunately I damaged a little bit the structure of my flower on the plate, but it was something around this. I use very diluted mix, and I try not to press too much on the paper when I paint these overlapping areas. So I try to hold my brush a little bit on the top of all these areas. Now I would like to add this bold indigo. I think that was indigo, pretty sure it was indigo. And I will add this same indigo in the middle of the flower. You can move a piece of paper a little bit to improve the distribution of the paints, or you can help paints to distribute with your brush. I think I rather prefer to keep it as it is, how it flows. I can add few brighter cerulean, brighter blue shades around the edge of the petal, and then I will let it dry. Next one will be this petal. I can see that it was a mix of cobalt green and cerulean blue, so I will just use those paints, or I can grab a little bit from this part. I think the brighter color, I will get the same color but a little bit brighter if I use the top. And let's imagine nice petal. So I firstly map out the petal, painting the outlines, and then I use water, and I use water to dilute, to soften those outlines and create the wash in the middle. Please don't move your brush too much on these overlapping areas. Be very, very gentle in those areas. To make it interesting, you can hold your brush, as I do, on the very top, and that will allow you to create some more spontaneous brush strokes. Now, always nice to add a little bit of outlines around, a little bit of indigo in the middle. I can also add a little bit of salt in some areas which are still wet but getting dry, and that at that very moment it will create the best texture. Don't overdo it. I do not recommend you to salt everything. Few occasional pinches around, and that will make the nice trick. Now let's dry it. What do we have here? Looks like a sepia or Van Dyke brown. So any browns, which is very nice match here. And some of you might think, what? Brown color for flowers? That's insane. And I encourage you to try different colors. This technique, this transparent layer technique, it's very friendly for color testing, because you can use very different colors, and if you apply in this technique, it can bring very interesting results. So now let's paint the front petal, which might be go around like this. Do some experiments, maybe have a look at real flowers if you have anything around, how petals are organized, what you can see, what you can't see, what's the edges looks like. I try almost not to use paints in the overlapping areas, just distribute them a little bit organically to keep their transparency. But to emphasize transparency, what I need is to bring a little bit more of contrast. With the tip of my brush, I will grab the bold color on the palette. I will just go around with this bold color around some areas, preferably in those areas which are wet, because that will create nice bleeds. If you go with your brush on some dried areas, it will just create very straight, bold outline, which sometimes not very welcome. Now let's make more accents on the bottom. Something like this. I think we're losing a little bit the brightness of the orange color, all right? I would like to test one thing. I would like to grab just this orange, probably cadmium orange, I'm pretty sure it was cadmium orange, and add some sprinkles just in this area. And with the tip of the brush, I will add a little bit more of orange around. See, now everything is flowing, overlapping, creating interesting mixes, interesting textures. You can again try things with the salt, but in my case I see that it already creates nice bleeds and textures without extra help. So I will just leave it like it is. Now when I look at my flower, for me it feels like it lost a little bit the green accent. So I carefully remove the salt. The area is already dry. You can now see the texture it created. And I would like to search in my palette whether I still have some cobalt green left. I would like to emphasize this intersecting area. So just this area, I will paint it over. Now I try to follow the shape with the tip of my brush. And I'm pretty sure if right now I will try to paint over sepia, this darkest color, it will destroy it. So I use this trick. I wash my brush, I dry it with a paper towel, and with the tip of my brush I will soften the edge, and therefore I will create this nice graded wash. So no need for me to go inside. It will still remain nice and bright. And I can add even more brightness with a little bit darker tones, watery tones. I will add a little bit more of contrast in this nice, beautiful overlapping area. Now let's go into details. First, let's put our flower on a stem. For a stem, I already have a mix of sepia. I might add a little bit of indigo. And it's always nice to add some curviness to this stem, something like this. Once flower sits on a stem, it looks very different. Let's play around. A few more details. I will use this indigo. It was also here, but now here it's a little bit, the mix is a little bit too dirty. So I will just go with the tip of my brush in the area of this blue petal, and I will try to add a little bit more of contrast in this area, and some details with the tip of the brush, something like this, very gentle. You can wash your brush, dry a brush with a paper towel, and carefully with the tip of the brush just go around and soften the edge. That will create the illusion that we painted this petal firstly, and then we applied the dark one. This petal looks a little bit simple, too simple. So I will water just the area, this open area of the petal. Maybe few extra shades around the edges. Look how more interesting it looks with different types of bleeds around. And I think if we have a blue petal next to the orange one, it very likely it can be that this blue petal reflects a little bit on the neighbor. On the neighbor, I would like to add one nice area, blue area on the blue petal. Same trick, I wash my brush, I dry it with a paper towel, and then with the tip of the brush I soften the edges, and that will create very nice organic grades, which we haven't done when we just painted it. Soften everything with clean water. You can correct a little bit the shape. And now you can either play around with salt or add some drops of water. I will add some salt in this area and in this freshly created stain. Once your flower is dry, you can either use a gel pen or just a brush with a fine tip, and with some bold mix you can go around and create some extra details. Something like this. Just play around and see what happens. A little bit more pressure, a little bit less pressure. Don't overdo it, but also don't be afraid. Let's play around a little bit with the ovary area. Sometimes this area is forgotten when paint flowers, but it's a very important one. It's usually a nice focal point. One more trick to add textures is to use an old toothbrush and then get relatively liquid mix of paints in it. You can use one of papers just to protect the area, and then you sprinkle a little bit around. That will create very nice delicate splashes like this. I would recommend to do it just on one side or on one petal, so not to overdo it. Maybe one more area like this. A little bit more in the middle. And now we have very interesting, textured, transparent flower. Thank you so much for painting with me. I hope it was easy, fun and relaxing. Please let me know in comments what would you like to paint next, and see you soon. Bye bye.